Today, we are diving into a really fascinating historical argument. This was a battle fought not with swords, but with a single, powerful idea about how we count. This is all about how we use numbers and whether the simple act of counting can actually create a hierarchy.
So, let's kick things off with a bit of a riddle. When does 1 + 1 not equal 2? Now, I know it sounds like a trick question, but the answer really gets to the very heart of the whole debate we're going to unpack today.
The answer? The answer? It's when you're talking about hierarchy, when one of those ones is seen as fundamentally better or more important than the other. See, this isn't a math problem at all. It's a value problem. And it's the core of a huge debate over something called sub-numeration.
All right, let's get right into the thick of it, the counting controversy. And it all boils down to two totally different ways of thinking about what it even means to put things in order. Okay, so this whole argument really hangs on these two key terms. First, you've got sub-numeration. That literally means to number something under something else. The idea is that the order you count in actually creates inferiority. The second thing is automatically less than the first. The opposing view? That's con-numeration, which means to number things with each other as equals. It argues that counting just makes a list. It doesn't create a ranking. And that distinction right there is everything.
So how did the people who believed in subnumeration even try to make their case? Well, let's dig into their first big argument, which is all about logical division.
They started with this huge, kind of abstract idea they called essence. You know, in philosophy, that's like the fundamental nature of a thing, but for us, just think of it as the biggest bucket you can imagine, one that contains absolutely everything.
And then they started breaking it down. From that giant category of essence, they'd pull out a more specific group, like animal. Now, in their minds, animal has just been subnumerated. It's now a lesser thing, counted under essence. And they don't stop there. They keep this chain going, dividing animal into an even more specific category, human. You see the hierarchy they're trying to build here? Essence at the top, then animal under that, then human under that. It seems kind of logical, right? Well, not so fast. Here is the absolute fatal flaw in their logic. The author of our source points out that this whole idea completely backfires on them. Why? Because a subdivision, by its very definition, has to share the exact same essence as the thing it came from. A human isn't less essence than an animal, it's just a specific type of animal. So their own example actually proves equality of substance, not inferiority. Whoops.
Okay, so that first argument was a total bust. So they switched gears, moving away from abstract logic and towards something we can all understand: money.
So they came up with this analogy. Imagine you have a golden stater, a really valuable coin, and a brass obol, a coin that's worth next to nothing. I mean, they're clearly not equal in value, right? So how do you count them? Their process, they claimed, was simple. First, you have to count the gold coin. Then, second, you count the brass coin. By putting the less valuable coin second in the count, they argued that you were officially subnumerating it, locking in its inferior status just by how you counted. And this, right here, this is the killer question that just unravels their entire argument. If the order of the count is what creates the hierarchy, what's stopping you from just counting the cheap brass coin first? Does that suddenly make the gold coin less valuable? Of course not. It's absurd. It shows that their whole system isn't based on some deep truth, but just on the random choice of whoever's doing the counting. Okay, so after tearing apart both of those arguments, the author lays out their own definitive case. And they ground the argument for equality not in some clever logical trick, but in the foundational text of Christian theology itself. The author points directly to this crucial verse. Now pay close attention to the wording: the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Ghost. They are all listed together in one single series, joined by the word and. This is textbook con-numeration, counting with each other as equals.
not sub-numeration. And this table just lays out the logic perfectly. If the Son is to the Father in the same way that the Spirit is to the Son, then it just follows that the Spirit also relates to the Father in that same way. It's one unbroken, equal, and coordinate series. There is simply no room for a hierarchy in there.
So here's the bottom line, the crucial point. Number is just a tool. It's a symbol that we invented to help us understand quantity. That's it. We count things, we weigh things, we measure things. But doing that doesn't change what those things are. Weighing a piece of gold and a piece of tin doesn't change the fact that one is gold and the other is tin. And counting them one after the other doesn't either. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, wow, this is some really deep philosophical stuff. And you're not wrong, but the stakes here were unbelievably high. Why on earth did this one little idea, sub-numeration, matter so much? So let's just recap the true purpose of a number, right? It's for signifying quantity, for counting separate things, and really just to act as a convenient symbol for us. What it is not for is altering the nature of things, and it's definitely not for creating a hierarchy of value where one doesn't actually exist. And that's exactly why this mattered. This wasn't just some dusty old argument about grammar or mass. This was a foundational battle to define the very nature of the Trinity. Winning this argument meant establishing a core doctrine that would shape belief for thousands of years, that the relationship was one of coordinate equals, not a ranked ladder of superior and inferior beings. You know, this ancient debate about numbering under versus numbering with really forces us to look at our own language today. And it makes you wonder, what other invisible hierarchies are we creating or reinforcing in the words we use every single day, maybe without even realizing it?